Take a look at building satisfying relationships in this session. And then in the second session, take a look at relationship killers, dealing with relationship killers, and dealing with difficult people. Relationships, according to the Bible, are something really crucial for our lives. As you watch TV or you see movies, the fact that almost every one of the stories you deal with is immersed in relationships escapes you, unless it's one of those real high dramas built on this relationship or a very intense love story. All the stories we know, almost all the adventures, are about people in the context of events, people relating to one another. We remember the heroes, but the stories are about people and their relationships. In the Bible, your relationships are very, very important. They're of different levels. You know, the word acquaintance basically means someone I know. That's one level of relationship. A friend is at a deeper level. A friend, by the way, is someone who intends you good. They're going to work for your good. An enemy is someone who intends to work for your downfall. They intend you harm. There are friends who are really enemies. Friends do you good. Enemies do you harm in the long run. Biblically, according to the Bible's understanding of relationships, we were meant for relationships originally. One of the statements that's made about the first man, the Lord says, "It's not good for the man to be alone. I'll make a helper suitable to him." What he makes is a wife. Out of the wife is going to come children, and out of the children, community. A part of God's plan for mankind is the development of communities, civilizations, and the relationships that we have in those. In the Bible, it's not good for us to be alone. We have this image in our society of the real hardened loner who's all sufficient by himself. That person actually is hurting on the inside because of relationships. We actually need relationships. We're meant for them. We also need the help of others that we find in relationships. Listen to this passage out of Ecclesiastes, a book on the philosophy of life. "Two are better than one because they have a good return for their work. If one falls down, his friend can help him up. But pity the man who falls and has no one to help him." That's a bad situation to be in. Also, if two lie down together, they'll keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? Though one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves. And a cord of three strands, you got three people, two more to help you out, is not quickly broken. We have a greater strength in life out of relationships. They're intended to actually be a help to us. This is so much true that, listen to this statement, an unfriendly man, Scripture says, pursues selfish ends. He's got his own selfish goals. Someone who's real unfriendly. The reason why they're that way is they got their own selfish goals. And Scripture says he defies all sound judgment. Somebody like that is just an idiot when it comes to real life. Because you isolate yourself from people, trouble always strikes, and we need others. So he defies all sound judgment. You know what you call someone with poor judgment? You know what the term is? In English, it's fool. Someone who intends to be totally self-sufficient, have their own way, run their own life, doesn't need anyone, that person's just foolish. We really need people. One of the great joys in life is out of friendship. As a matter of fact, if you'll track back through the past, you'll discover that the greatest hurts you've had have been out of relationships. And probably the greatest joys you've had to date have been in relationships. As you look on into the future, then the biggest problems you're going to have are probably going to be relationships. That could be that something will happen to you physically. That'll create major problems for you. But probably it's going to be relationships, even in that situation. Relationships are just extremely important. Done well, done rightly, they can bring a tremendous amount of joy. There's a verse that says, Proverbs 27:9, "Perfume and incense bring joy to the heart." You know, there are delightful aesthetic settings, and they make us perk up. You know, you get nice music, makes you perk up. They bring joy to the heart. And the pleasantness of one's friend springs from his earnest counsel. There are times whenever people who really do care for you, and you go through some real hard things with them, maybe they share some things with you that are very hard for you to take. And there's struggle, and then finally that's resolved, and there's just a sweetness in this relationship that's just a tremendous joy to you. Now, friendship's intended to be a real strength and a real help. We need relationships. Now, of course, their romantic relationships would be a subcase of this. But I'm thinking about just relationships in general. Whenever you come to know the Lord Jesus and you start trying to deal with life, all of a sudden one of the things you discover is you got a lot of relationships you got to deal with. You become part of a church, you start moving into brand new relationships. Life is just made up of relationships. Another fact, just about a biblical perspective on relationships. In the Bible, according to the Bible, you need to choose your friendships wisely. In our culture, we're not taught to do that. You know, some of the movies coming out create a bleeding heart in you, so you're going to help anybody who's got problems. Other movies come out, and you want to find that true group of adventurers that you really want to do life with. And we have all these different images in the movies and on TV. But according to the Bible, you need to pick the people who are going to get close to your heart carefully. And there are several reasons. Proverbs 27:17, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. And the idea is you use a file to sharpen the knife. The iron makes an impact on the knife. I have a knife my daughter brought me from a Gurkha army knife from where? Nepal. Thank you. I lost it for a moment. The knife doesn't come with a file. It comes with two smaller sharpening knives. They're about this long, and they're iron, and they don't have any file marks on them, but you use the iron against the iron to sharpen the larger knife. So relationships are like that with us. As we rub against those close to us, they shape our lives, and they can shape them for good or for trouble. So you want to form relationships rightly. Proverbs 13:20, 12:26. A righteous man is cautious in friendship. He's careful about this. And he's not the unfriendly man who doesn't want relationships. He's just cautious about who gets close enough to shape him. Proverbs 13:20, he who walks with the wise grows wise, but a companion of fools suffers harm. Have you ever joined the fools and gotten harm out of it? I have. I can think of 2 or 3 experiences in my life. I should just let the fools go on. But I joined them the bunch, and I suffered consequences for it. If you make a consistent pattern, if there are people that you just really like, but their lives are heading a direction that's headed for trouble, you need to pull your heart back. You can be an acquaintance, you can be sort of a buddy, but the word that's used here, he who walks with the wise, the companion of fools. The companion of fools is, the word literally is grazing buddy. You know, the two sheep that like to walk along and graze together. That's the ones you hang out with. 1 Corinthians 15:33 comments, don't be misled. Bad company corrupts good character. So, in building relationships, what you tend to get taught from the movies and from TV is you don't have to think about this. Relationships like love just happen. You're just walking along and all of a sudden you fall in love. You're walking along and you got a friend. Well, you biblically, you evaluate this because your life's very important to you. You want to hook it up deeply with people who are headed the direction you want to go, because you really can't be pulled other directions. Some relationship insights. These are almost rules, but I would stay with insights. Relationships need to be mutually beneficial. Now, you'd think this ought to be obvious, but many times it gets left in the dust. People who build relationships with one another ought to find the relationship benefiting each of them. If you've had a struggle in relationships in the past, you may have trouble in this area. But this friendship that develops, or the guy-girl relationship, really ought to be a benefit of both people. Sometimes it ends up benefiting one at the expense of the other. That always leads to separation. Philippians 2, 3, and 4. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility consider others better than yourself. Each of you, catch this, each of you should look not only to your own interests, but also to the interest of others. You have to look at this other person's interests. Now, whenever relationships get one-sided, one person benefits, trouble begins. We'll look at, there's some things in the area of relationship killers that fit here that we'll deal with. Second thing, the relationship ought to have an atmosphere of freedom to it. Just this whole thing, as I relate to this person, there ought to be a sense of freedom both for me and for them if this thing is healthy, if it's going to be healthy. I ought to have a choice to relate to this person or not to. Have you ever been in a relationship where, I don't mean necessarily dating, it could be just a guy-guy friendship, girl-girl friendship, or it could be male-female relationship. Have you ever been in a relationship where you weren't free? Felt like you're pressured? This thing's got to be. And it's pressure to go deeper, or it's pressure to be there. Whenever the pressure begins, the relationship starts to fall apart. Now, there needs to be a sense of freedom. 2 Corinthians 3:17, verse says, now the Lord is the Spirit. It's talking about Jesus. But where the Spirit of the Lord is, there's freedom. If this really is of God, there ought to be a sense of freedom to this thing. And there ought to be an ease of movement in the relationship. Ecclesiastes 7:26, I find more bitter than death the woman who is a snare, whose heart is a trap, and whose hands are chains. We never run into someone who's like that. They sort of grab you and hold you down. You just smother out of that kind of relationship. There has to be a sense of freedom in a good relationship. It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. He wants us to be free, that is. That's why he set us free. He wants us to be free. Stand firm then, and do not let yourselves be burdened again by a yoke of slavery. If you ever get into a relationship where the freedom begins to evaporate and you start feeling like you're in tremendous bondage, it's a signal something's unhealthy here. We'll talk more about that later. Relationships ought to have a sense of freedom to them. And as we build a relationship with people, we ought to give them a sense of freedom. We ought to give them air, space. Third thing, relationships require investment. You really want good relationships through time, then they take an investment. You have to spend time, have to spend emotions, have to spend money. Now this is usually pretty obvious to women. For men, sometimes this is a revelation. Relationship take resources. What a thought. Guys tend to just sort of bum along in life, and life happens for them, and they handle things very objectively. Whenever they start building relationships, they start finding that they've got to be faithful with the relationship, and it starts being a surprise. They require an investment. The deeper the relationship, the greater the investment. Takes time, takes money, takes emotional energy. If you want friendships, those friendships will infringe on your time. You want friendships, they'll infringe on your pocketbook. You want friendships will take emotional resources out of you. For some of you, you can have friendships with 100 people and be thoroughly refreshed. You can see them all in an hour space. Others of you can handle about one, every day or so. And that just drains you. But it doesn't matter whether you have hundreds or you just have one. There's still the investment and still the cost. Relationships require commitment to another person's best. And this one is really crucial. We're commanded by the Lord in the Bible to love people Jesus is asked a question by a guy, what's the first and greatest commandment? What's the biggest one there is, Lord? He says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. The second, though, he didn't let the guy get away with one. The second is like to it. These are sort of flip sides of the same coin. You have to love your neighbor as yourself. So whenever we start into a relationship, we really need to be looking to love this person. Love in a biblical sense of the word. The word that's used is a word that doesn't mean emotions, but it's a commitment to this other person's best. I will do what is best for this person. And I'll do it because it's right, no matter how I feel. The word in the Greek is agape. It's a kind of love that sacrifices for the loved one's best interest, whether or not the emotions are there. So, if I'm going to enter a relationship, particularly it just goes beyond acquaintance, I'm going to need to act for this other person's best interests. The guideline Jesus gave for loving or for relationships is how to act in them is Matthew 7:12. So in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you. This sums up the Old Testament. And then again, Luke 6:31. Do to others as you would have them do to you. So the question is, how do I relate to this person? How do I relate to my friend right now? How do I handle this relationship? Well, do what you'd like them to do to you. And you'll probably be pretty well on target. Now, the reason why I bring this up requires commitment to another person's best is that we get tempted to try to take things from people rather than be a giver to people. Now, sometimes this happens in romantic relationships. We just get bent all out of shape over a certain person. And we start getting real jealous. We don't want them around certain people because they might have experiences that might deprive us. And so we start getting real jealous. Or we begin to be real demanding with people. And they're not meeting our needs and we want our needs met. Whenever in reality, we're supposed to be loving this person. So we'll come back to this in relationship killers. Relationships require commitment to another person's best. That best is not necessarily always what they want immediately. Sometimes, I've had through the years to tell people, no, I can't give you money. Because right now, I know what you'll do with it, and you're going to hurt yourself. Well, if you were my friend, you would give me the money I want. No, I am your friend, and I'm not going to do you harm. Sometimes it means not doing what people want. It's a commitment to their best. But it's a commitment to their real best. I don't know if you've ever been around people who just want to do you good. But they're going to do you good from their viewpoint, not your viewpoint. And you want to run from those people. But you're actually trying to genuinely do this person good. My daughter dated a fella. One of the commitments I asked from him in dating her was that by the time their relationship finished, whether it ended in marriage or it ended in them going their separate ways, is that she would have been a better Christian for the relationship rather than a worse Christian. And he made the commitment and he's kept it. But this is the way a relationship ought to be anyway, dating or otherwise. Relationships require trust. Proverbs 19:22 says, what a man desires is unfailing love. It's talking about a person in general, is unfailing love. Man, really what we want down underneath it all, if you really get down to it, whether it's guys or girls, what we want is we want somebody to actually care for us. We want them to be a real friend. We want them to be out for our best. And we want them to be there for us whenever we have need. But boy, it's hard to find. It's just hard to come up with. But that's what's really down in all our hearts. It doesn't matter who we are, it doesn't matter how we look, it doesn't matter our family backgrounds. Underneath it all, we want to be treated considerately and faithfully. Relationships require trust. We want that kind of relationship, but you know what? Many times what we experience is the opposite. So we learn to be very guarded in our approach to people. And some of us have been very damaged by other people in the past, and so we are highly guarded. Others of us have had better experiences. We're not as guarded. But all of us guard ourselves as we move toward relationships. And that's not wrong. It's actually fairly smart. Because not everybody in the world is a nice person. There are some people who will really rip you off. How does trust build in relationships? It goes something like this. Two people who don't know each other one of them takes some risk with the other person. And in that risk, they're not harmed. So they trust a little bit. They take greater risk and they're not harmed. And so they trust more. They take greater risk and they're not harmed. As two people take the risk and find that the other person doesn't damage them, their trust level with each other grows. If you want a friend, there are going to be points where you need to take new steps of risk for our relationship to go deeper. If you want to remain totally protected, that term is isolated. You cannot have relationships without risk. As a matter of fact, you can't love without risk. Did you know that no one can ever prove their love to you? I mean, they can prove they don't love you. That one's easy. All they have to do is betray you. But no one can prove their love to you. You have to believe it and trust. And in the trust, you could be hurt. There's a risk. So if you want to build friendships and you've had damage from the past, one of the things you're going to have to do is you're going to have to take some risk to take little steps forward. I watch people dating, and one of the ways people protect themselves in dating is just by being a pain. If you're a real pain to the other person, they'll reject you, and then you can prove to yourself that's what was going to happen. Yeah, I expected they'd do this. You don't take risk. But as long as you stay risk-free, you also stay relationship-free. So there has to be a willingness to take a step and possibly be hurt somewhat. You don't just dump your whole life in front of somebody that you just met and say, accept me or reject me. I mean, they just may take a knife right through your heart. That's foolish. But you can take steps. Like even if you walk into the building here on Sunday morning, and you say hello to someone or they say hello to you, they've taken a risk. It's just a tiny little risk. It's that they're going to get a smile rather than a scowl. But it's out of tiny little risk that relationships begin to open up. However, you can't have a relationship without risk. And in some relationships, there will be pain. But relationships require trust. The key ingredients for relationships are love and faithfulness. The proverb says, let love and faithfulness never leave you. Bind them around your neck, write them on the tablet of your heart. Get hold of this, in other words. Then you will win favor and a good name in the sight of God and man. If you want a good reputation through the years, if you want people to look at you with favor, these are the two things you do. The love, particularly right here, has to do with kindness, the Hebrew word that's used. It's a kind of loyal kindness to this person. I do what is kind. In all kinds of situations, I can say what is cutting. Instead of doing that, I say what's kind. I can say what's brilliant and makes me look good, or I can say what's kind. I can do things that are injurious, or I can do things that are kind. I make my choice, and I do what is kind. It's love. And then the faithfulness is reliability. The word basically is reliability. That is, this person, the idea of the word is that whatever has this characteristic to it, you can lean against it, it won't move. You can stand on it, it will not give way, it will not collapse. It's there, and it's firm, and it's solid. And that's what we want in relationships. We want people who are reliable. So, you're reliable. You're reliable with people's secrets. You're reliable with the way you handle their reputation before other people. You're just a reliable person. If there's a need, you're not God, you can't be there every instant, but you will act in this person's best interest. You can be counted on to do this because you're faithful. It's love and faithfulness that gain you favor in the eyes of people. You want to be well thought of in the group, you become a person of love and faithfulness, and you will be. It's a matter of time. They require love and faithfulness. Relationships need humility, patience, and courtesy. Humility is a willingness to realize that we all stand on level ground before God. No one of us is better than the others. Doesn't matter what race the person is, what job the person is, we all stand on level ground. What easily happens in relationships is pride. Pride gets in the way, and boy, people start getting angry with each other. Pride always generates conflict. Humility is needed again and again and again, rather than getting all offended and on my high horse. And I just need to humble myself and work through situations. Humility, patience. Have you always gotten things right all your life from the start? Anytime you entered a new relationship, you always did things right completely. You entered a new job, you always did things right. No, we all make mistakes. And in relationships, things don't always go right. You have to be patient with people. The same thing you'd want from them, you have to give back to them. Patience. And courtesy. Courtesy is a term we don't use much today. There's a kind of abrasiveness that sort of runs in the culture. But actually in the scriptures, one of the terms used for love, let me read these. 1 Corinthians 13, 4 and 5 says, love is patient. This love in relationships. Love is kind, doesn't envy, doesn't boast, it's not proud. It is not rude. It's not self-seeking. The idea of the not rude is there's a kind of appropriate behavior, there's a kind of courtesy that goes with love. So you don't take people for granted and you don't treat them offhandedly. You actually think and you're courteous to the people that you love. I need to be courteous, especially to my wife. It's very easy not to be courteous to her because we've been together so long. I especially need to be courteous there. But wherever there are relationships, courtesy is required. Whenever you do relate in an offhanded way or inappropriate way and people get offended, what you need to do is change the way you relate to courteous. Put this thing back together. Colossians 3, 12 and 13 also on this humility, patience, and courtesy. Therefore, as God's chosen people, clothe yourselves with compassion. Listen to these terms: compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, patience. Bear with each other, forgive whatever grievances you may have against one another. This is a pretty considerate situation right here. A ninth one. Relationships need maintenance, particularly communication and forgiveness. It's very easy to take relationships for granted, particularly if they get long distance. But there still needs to be communication with people. Relationships thrive as people communicate with one another. So you need to communicate, but you also have to do forgiveness again and again in a real relationship. In a real relationship, people get hurt. The reason why you get hurt is because you're close. It's people who are close to each other in the crowd that step on each other. You don't step on people across the auditorium. It's people who work together 40, 60, 80 hours a week who offend each other. Why? Because they were together. A normal fact of our humanity is that we do things wrong occasionally and they offend people. If you want a relationship, there's going to be time there's offense, and you just have to repair this thing. So, that's just maintenance needed. You just have to do it. You expect it. If things get crossways, the world has not ended. You just need to fix it. They require maintenance through love and faithfulness. Again, those same terms. This is Proverbs 16:6. Through love and faithfulness, a sin is atoned for. Isn't that interesting? Whenever you do blow it in a relationship, how do you put it back together? By doing the kindness and by being reliable. Whenever you've violated trust or you've hurt someone, how long does it take to put the relationship back together? As long as it takes. How long do you have to do love and faithfulness? As long as it takes. But what you do to put it back together, you have to go to one another, ask forgiveness. Whenever I did such and such, it was wrong. Will you forgive me? Not, Oh, if I offended you, would you forgive me? That means only a small person would be offended by what I did, but in case you're that small, would you forgive me? But you say, I was wrong, will you forgive me? If you're not sure if it's wrong, if there's wrong, then go explore. Say, I'm very much value our relationship, and I'd like to know, is there anything wrong in our relationship? And if the person says, oh no, then say, well, great. And then go on. Rather than wonder, and they got that angry look on their face, and you wonder what you've done. And it turns out they're just preoccupied. You have to maintenance a relationship. You have to go in and find out something's wrong. If it's not, fine. If there is something wrong, then I did wrong. Will you forgive me? And this is in all relationships. Normally in the world, what we do with relationships is we violate them. We make a violation, and then we abandon them. We don't ever want to see those people again. We're so embarrassed. We're so humiliated. And what we need to do is just swallow our pride, humble ourselves, go back and ask forgiveness. In the Church of God particularly, there's a room for people to make mistakes. And we're all learning. And if somebody blows it in a relationship, then they just need to put it back together. It may take a while. Since relationships are based on trust, the last thing on earth you want to do with one is violate trust. Because it's hard to get back. But if it has been violated, forgiveness needs to be asked. That's the first step. And then love, and then faithfulness take place. And trust can be regained. Here's a last one. Relationships will reveal new things about you. And for this reason, sometimes we avoid them. You know, we don't want people telling us things. You have a chart that some call the Johari window at the bottom of the page. You have a box. Let me take this over with me to the board. You have a box. I'd like you to draw in it. There are things known to you. There are things not known to you. There are things known to others about you. There are things not known to others about you. What I'd like to do is draw a window like this, 4-pane window, in this horizontal box, break it into 4 components. There are things known to you and others. You may not like it, but this is a known area for you. There are things that are known to you, but are not known to others. And this is an area of the unknown to others, but you know. There are things that are known to others and not to you. I'll call it aha. Wow, it's unpleasant to find these things out very often in relationships. I once talked to a group of leaders in a church about a proposal, and the pastor of the church wanted me to make this presentation. After I finished, one of the staff members told me, he said, you know, people normally don't aggress on you. I said, why? This is 20 years ago. He said, because you are large and bearded and look somber. I was shocked. I thought I looked like a teddy bear. I began to work on smiling because, you see, this was known to others, but it wasn't known to me. Surprise. You have to be ready for surprises. Don't be so defensive as you start learning about yourself. And then you have to be ready for big surprises. Whenever there are areas not known to other people and not known to you either. There are parts of us we just have never experienced before. And sometimes in relationships, these come out. Very tender spots you didn't even know about. You have to be willing, if you're going to have relationships with people, you have to be willing to learn new things about yourself. These are some of the rules of relationships, some insights about dealing with them, about founding them, building them. We're going to take a look at relationship killers and dealing with difficult people in the next segment. Right now, we're going to take a break.